All right, I'm excited to introduce our Direction Not Perfection community today to Bronwyn Scweigerdt, psychotherapist and anger expert. She has experienced success in helping people break free from depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, even psychosis once and for all by reconnecting them to their anger and healing relationships. And so interested in this topic. Welcome, Bronwyn.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Lindsay.
So excited to have you. Thank you for waking up with us today. Our time frames are a little different. I'm like, oh, it's mid-afternoon. I'm good to go. You're like, oh,
No, no, no.
just
I get up really early, so I'm very happy.
I love it. And I just wanted to kick us off today because I was telling you this before we jumped on, but I definitely live in the world of weight management. A lot of my individuals, whether that's trying to gain, maintain, lose, a lot of weight talk. And I feel like people have experienced that stress might be an issue for weight management. But then there's also this whole other side of trauma or things that aren't being dealt with that could be game changers in somebody's experience with their overall health, which I'm excited to dive in because you have a niche in anger. Talk to us how and where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Oh yeah, that's a fun story. So, as you know, my first career was in nutrition. I have a bachelor's and a master's in nutrition. I was very happy to stay in that career, but I myself fell into a very severe depressive episode. Talk about our bodies and our mind body connection. I thought I was going crazy because I was literally involuntarily vomiting at random times. So I would be driving down the freeway and just have to vomit in my lap. I'd be walking down the street and I would just throw up. It was so humiliating. It was horrible. And that was actually connected to my level of anxiety and depression. So I went to therapists. So everyone who knew me is like, Bronwyn, you need to seek a therapist. And I did. And I went to multiple. And this is back when it was more in person than these days. And I remember sitting there in the office and thinking to myself, I am barely functioning right now, but I still think I would make a better therapist than this person. And that was the case with pretty much everyone I went to, unfortunately. So, part of that first depressive episode, part of my healing journey was actually deciding to change careers and going back to school and getting a second master's and then getting my 3,000 hours to get licensed. I'm glad I did. I will say it's interesting, the nutrition, body connection, mind, body, all that, what you're suggesting as well, the trauma, our past experiences. So I really was of the mindset in the field of nutrition that if people just ate really well and exercised really well, that we could just defeat all these, especially autoimmune disorders, because no one knows why they're there. No one knows. So that was one. And then things like autoimmune, like headaches, migraines, GI problems, all these phantom issues that no one knows. And now I really believe if you just eat right and exercise and drink enough water and go outside and all these things. And now I'm pretty much to the opposite end of the spectrum on those. So I wasn't looking to get here, but I have had clients who had migraines since they were 12 come to me. And I'm like, oh, it sounds like it's suppressed anger that you've been holding in your body because at age 12, you weren't allowed to show anger anymore. That's when your parents said you need to act your age and you need to be grown up and you weren't allowed to express yourself or assert yourself in any way. And you've been holding that in your body ever since. And as soon as they start to see that, I mean, those headaches, those migraines are a thing of the past. Also, on my own podcast, Angry at the Right Things, a lot of it's about our relationship with anger. We all have anger. There's no such thing as an angry person because that's like saying, oh, well, I'm not a breathing person. We all have anger. And what matters is our relationship to our anger. And I would say the same thing is true of our body. For example, our relationship to food. I see it as within a larger picture of our relationship to ourselves. And so we develop a relationship with food the day we're born, actually. And I find that a lot of babies and young children, their moms give them food as a way to kind of shut them up, to comfort them, especially like a bottle versus the breast, because that's just easier to do. They pop a bottle in their mouth. And I used to work with very young infants and children in the field of nutrition. And I would see it. The baby really is crying, not because she's hungry. She's crying because she just wants to be held. She is wanting to be nurtured. She is not just wanting, she is needing to be nurtured. And she's crying because she's desiring that nurture. She's expressing her frustration at not having it. And then the mom just pops a bottle in her mouth. And that works. It shuts her up. And then now her relationship with food is one where food placates me. It doesn't really nurture me, but it gives me, it's better than nothing. And it's all I'm getting. And so now her neurons that fire together, wire together. So in her little brain, those wires are crossed where food is a source of nurture, a source of comfort when I am not getting the nurture I need from my mother, which is actually my true source of nurture. And so we develop these relationships with food. That's one example. And it's also a relationship with ourselves because we relate to ourselves. We nurture ourselves or withhold nurture from ourselves the same way we were parented. So if we were parented withholding nurture, we will actually withhold nurture from ourselves. We will deprive that from ourselves. And then the only outlet we have that we feel like is kosher is food. So we won't say, hey, husband, I just need a hug and I just need you to hold me while I express how sad I am, while I cry. We won't do that. We won't ask for that because that's too scary. We've never learned to do that because we didn't have that as a child consistently. And when we didn't get it, it felt like rejection. It was too painful. So we're not going to ask for that again. So instead of saying to our significant other, to our partner, hey, can you just listen to me while I express how sad I am and hold me and comfort me and nurture me? We're not going to do that. We're just going to open the fridge and find some food because that will do the trick. It's a safe route. It's not as satisfying, but it is safe. It's consistent. It's predictable, and the food won't reject us.
Right, which all makes so much sense. And I feel like for the individual who hasn't started building that insight, I'm hoping that that little light bulb moment's going off. And then for the individual who goes, all right, I'm there. I know why I'm doing it. I'm so curious because I feel like you work your clients or patients through how to unleash this. Like, what does that look like in a session?
Absolutely. So, yeah, we can unlearn those imprints. So, those are imprints that we learn in early childhood. And this is why one of the many frustrations I have with the therapeutic community, because a lot of therapists, like, the best you're going to do is talk about that and go, yeah, it really sucked. That was how I was raised. Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, I'm just going to grieve it. Okay. Like that doesn't help us unlearn it. It doesn't help us undo it. We're still, now we have insight. We know why we're going to the fridge instead of asking the spouse. We have more insight and that can be helpful. I'm not going to completely dismiss it, but we can actually unlearn those imprints. And so my more recent episodes of my podcast, I have a co-host and I do those exercises with her. And the point of my podcast is really for people who are not going to be my clients to glean these principles and take it for themselves without having to come to me or even get frustrated at other therapists who aren't giving these principles. So I do now more exercises where I'm leading my co-host, her name is Katie, through these things. And so I want the listener to be able to do that for themselves. And you can, because I did it for myself. That's where I learned all these things firsthand. So I lead people in an imagination exercise so it's really healing our relationship with our inner child. So I will have them close their eyes and then imagine little Katie. I'll say, so do you see little Katie when she is just crying for her mom to pick her up and hold her, but mom's not doing that and she feels rejected. And so mom's just giving her food and she's like, okay, I'll just take the food. And so can you picture that happening? And I'll have them imagine little Katie doing that. And then I'll say, okay, now I want you to imagine that adult Katie enters that memory. And mom fades into the background. It's just you and little Katie. And I want you to imagine you're looking her in the eyes and you say to her, little Katie, I see how sad you feel, how lonely you feel, how rejected you feel in this moment. And I see that you're just kind of taking the food as it works, but it's not what you really want or need. And I see that and it breaks my heart. And here's the thing, little Katie, I'm here now and I commit to nurturing you. I commit to attuning to you. So when you cry, when you're in need of nurture and comfort, I will never reject you. I will never dismiss you. I will always attune to you. I will always validate your feelings because they matter to me and your needs matter to me. And I will meet every one of your needs and your limitations matter. I will respect and honor those things. And what I need you to see is that your cries and your feeling of rejection right now, that's not a you problem. That's a mom problem. She's the problem. And that doesn't mean she's evil, but it means she doesn't know better. But that's her problem. That is not a reflection of you. Your crying, your feelings of rejection and loneliness are not a reflection of you. They're a reflection of her. But I'm here now to consistently give you that. There's no shame. There's no more shame. It's not your shame that you're feeling. It's her shame. And I'm going to just give you that. And so I have Katie then imagine she's now picking up little Katie and holding her and just comforting her. And then she imagines not just that, but carrying her out of the house and then closing the front door behind them and then walking out into the sunlight together.
Hmm. Thank you for the visual and that, and like really talking through that whole experience because it brings
Yeah.
us all along. And one of the first questions I have for you, I think what we see is that we want or expect somebody else to come in and fill in those feelings of somebody else to come in and nurture us that way or to provide space or boundaries or whatever that is that we're really seeking. And then there's this frustration of that's a lot of expectation on other people. You're empowering the person that they can actually, if I'm understanding this correctly, they're doing their own self soothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
because it is good to have expectations on people around us. Absolutely. But they will never be 100% consistent. And we need that consistency and we need that to come from us. And that is healing our relationship with ourselves, learning to no longer betray ourselves, to no longer neglect ourselves, to learn to want to nurture ourselves. So it's just changing within us our own dynamic to ourselves. And so now we're like, okay, you know what? I'm actually feeling kind of angry because I just asked my husband to hear me out and he's not even making eye contact with me. And he's like, yeah, I'm listening, but he's actually doing something else. And I'm feeling kind of angry. And you know what? My anger matters because I've healed my relationship with myself and I know that this is important. And so I'm going to speak up and I'm going to say, hey, Steve, this is not okay. This is really dismissive. And so when we heal our relationship with ourselves, then we've healed our relationship with our anger and we don't suppress the anger until Steve does 10 times in a row. And now we're like screaming because we've been suppressing. And now we're exploding. We just in the moment go, hey, that's really dismissive. And I'm not okay with that. And that's us externalizing our anger in the moment. It's not holding up in our body, becoming stagnant, giving us a migraine. It's us channeling it out of our body in a healthy, responsible way.
yeah, yes. There are two components to that because one is once you get well with yourself, then you can understand where you do need to hold boundaries outside. But then that flip side of it is was I unnecessarily having anger towards others where I
Mm.
needed the power, but like that
Mhm.
power was stripped away and I'm seeking it everywhere but me. Can we play for a second? Can I give you a case study? And then
Absolutely, I would love
you
that,
run
yeah.
with it? Okay.
Yeah.
It's like I literally just had this conversation this morning, but I have one client who still has ADHD as a young child adult, and she always describes herself as like, I was always too much and not enough all at the same time. I was shushed a lot. That's like a real button for her, is the shushing, and that food was an issue. Her mom was always trying to cover up weight, like lock the fridge at one point. So she has a lot of those mom things moving forward in life too. And I'm wondering if somebody just told you all that and was sitting in front of you in your office, if you could do like that exact same walkthrough, just for example, number two, of how you would walk them back through for the unwinding.
Yeah, okay. So, it would take maybe some time to figure out where the original imprint happened for her. So, I can tell you my theory right now,
Mhm.
it's a working theory. I find that a lot of people with ADD, it's suppressed anger. People say it's from trauma. I don't even like the word trauma. I feel like it just muddies the waters. I just like suppressed anger because you and I can go through the same event and you don't have suppressed anger from it and I do. So for me, I'm going to have like a trauma reaction and you're not. So I don't even like the word trauma. I think a lot of people with ADD have lifelong suppressed anger from an imprint starting very young. A lot of times I find it's from when a child after them, a younger sibling, they had mom's 100% attunement and they lost it. So this might not be the case for this person that you spoke
Sure.
to, but it's not uncommon. And their little 3-year-old self, let's say her name's Lisa, little 3-year-old Lisa's like, what the hell? What happened? How dare this little child come and like steal the show? Because with a newborn, it's like, do I have other kids? Oh, do I have an arm? I don't know. Like you're not in your right mind. No one is. And so, yeah, so little Lisa went from having mom's full attunement, which is awesome, and kids need that, to maybe now the only attunement she gets is as a good big sister who's like being responsible, right? For her or like doing something amazing, like a perfect, beautiful work of art she does in kindergarten. And those are imprints where wherever we get that attention, that attunement, those lay those foundations for life. That Lisa is probably going to be so into doing beautiful, perfect artwork from here on out, or being very responsible and getting her kudos from being really responsible, whether it's with a younger sibling or in some other way. But that anger is still there and it's underground because she can't say, hey, mom, what the hell? Where'd all my attunement go? She can't say that. I talk about this on one of my podcasts with my own daughter. So I just had one child, but going back to when I fell into my severe depressive episode, she was 5 and we had just uprooted and moved away, which is why I fell into the depression so severely. I was so lonely. I knew no one. I didn't have a job. That was her first year in kindergarten. She's in kindergarten. My husband's off at work. I know no one all day long. And that was really a big part of it. Anyway, so I became so depressed, but what my daughter Edie experienced is she didn't have the awareness, of course, to go, oh, mom's going through a depressive episode. She's not rejecting me. She didn't have that awareness. All she felt is mom's not smiling with me. She's not making eye contact with me. She's not excited about me or anything else, but especially me. Mom's just kind of like alive physically, but like the lights are off, nobody's home. So she felt extremely rejected by me. And, I didn't attune to her at all. Like we had made this big move. I never said, Edie, how did that move affect you? You're 5, you're almost 6. How was it for you to lose all your friends and lose your community and lose your dog, who was like your big sister? I didn't attune to her. She felt completely emotionally abandoned by me. I didn't know that at the time. She didn't know that at the time. All I knew was now on top of my depressive episode, my daughter, who's now about 6, is acting like I'm her enemy. And that was new. And
Mhm.
I felt rejected by her because she was, in fact, rejecting me back, which is what kids do. And so for the next 14 years, she was rejecting me back. And that when my depressive episode vanished, that still created more depression because I felt very rejected by her suddenly. Anyway, long story short, about a year and a half ago, as a therapist, I'm starting to make all these connections with these little children and their imprints from their parents. Their parents have no idea what happened, what they did to create it. The parents have no awareness. The kids have no awareness. So about a year and a half ago, I'm starting to connect these dots. And I tell my daughter, you know, when you were 5 and we moved, I fell into a very severe depressive episode. But what I need you to know is that I absolutely emotionally abandoned you. And I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. And I wrote her a letter called Dear 5-Year-Old Edie. And I sent it to her. And it was like saying, this is what I would do differently. This is what I would do differently now that I know. So anyway, we have since, just in the last year and a half, repaired our relationship. But most importantly, what I need everyone to hear here is that she, since she was 5 and the move, had sudden onset of anxiety, of ADD, of chronic headaches and chronic stomach aches since that time, age 5, almost 6. When we repaired our relationship, because I apologized, and that took time for her, it took
Sure.
time, but
Mhm.
over that time, all of those things stopped. I mean, just stopped. Her ADD, her chronic anxiety, her headaches, and her stomach aches are a thing of the past. And they were there for 14 years. So, what I'm saying is, this is powerful. This is
Mhm.
powerful stuff, and it can be undone.
Yeah, which is so hopeful. So thank you for saying that because somebody else would hear 14 years and be like, that's just me. I'm just living with this. This is my new normal. And to hear that hope that no, you can change. Like you might have to try everything out there to do it. I like your example of going to multiple therapists and being, for me, none of this is working. You needed something different. And you found that. It's just I think that people give up too soon because they need a little more handheld through the journey of if this doesn't work, that's okay. We'll try this. And if this doesn't work, it's okay. We'll
Yeah.
try this.
I think the bottom line is, so a lot of us will never have a healing repair of our relationship with our parent, whether our parent's alive or not. We're never going to have that. That's never going to happen. But what was most healing for Edie, because I told her, I said, you felt rejected by me. And what I need you to know is that was a mom problem, not an Edie problem. That was a reflection of mom and mom's incapacity, not you. And I think that's really the takeaway here is that we can do that for ourselves. At age whatever, we can go, oh, yeah, I did feel completely emotionally abandoned by my mom when my little brother was born. I felt rejected. But what I need my little Bronwyn to know is that was a mom problem. I I'm not shameful. I didn't deserve that. I don't deserve that. And I can give that to myself by that exercise where I meet with little Bronwyn and I tell her, you're not rejected. You're wanted because I see you and I see how precious you are. I am delighted by you and you are so important to me and I will see you consistently.
I've literally had chills the whole time you're talking, could cry hearing, it's so deep and so many people affected in the same way. And I was thinking about this alive parents versus people who can't get that resolution. What am I looking for? What word am I looking for?
Repair, the repair.
Yeah, repair. That was a gift you gave your daughter. And to your point, most people aren't going to have a mom that's going to come around in like the full capacity that you were able to come around and do that heartfelt apology. And not only heartfelt, but like very well understood, very wise. So I guess my question is, does it look different for the person who has the alive parent who's still not giving the repair? No, because it's not about the other person, it's about yourself. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So I would say for most of us, trying to have that talk with the parent, hey, you really hurt me when I was a kid. For a lot of us, being that level of vulnerable and having that kind of talk could actually be counterproductive. It could actually cause more harm.
Hmm. Because that other person is not going to understand it in this way.
Well, when you say understand, they're going to choose not to understand. And I think intuitively, a part of us is like, you're choosing not to hear what I'm saying. And now
Mm.
I'm more angry than
Mm.
ever because here I am being so vulnerable with you, opening up. You're dismissing me, you're minimizing my experience, or you're denying it. And that's a choice. And so now we're more angry and we aren't expressing it. And so now we have more anger in our body that we're suppressing, right? So it can actually cause more damage.
Oh, interesting. Yes, and agreed. Yeah, I feel like the deeper we go on this, the more we talk, I'm like, this is common. I mean, this is your area, so I believe you to probably think it's super common. But
Yeah.
when I go through my list of conversations with different clients, this is pretty common. And I think our listeners, for those of you who are still tuned in, are going, wow, that's interesting. You're talking about this on here. And this is me. That's like defining me to a T. So let's ask this question for the person going, this is me. And I hear you, Bronwyn, but I also am a little nervous about, I don't know if I still understand where to go dip my toe in first. I can listen to your podcasts. That sounds like a fabulous place to start to get some of these tools.
Yes.
Keep walking us through next steps.
So I see most people who are seeking out therapy or self awareness, insight, tend to be on the codependent spectrum, what I would
Mm.
call the codependent spectrum. So, codependence, and I have a whole podcast episode about codependency. It's called Unrooting Codependency. So, my goal is to get to the root. So, that's what we're talking about, these early childhood experiences, and unroot it because most therapists, they don't go to the root. They manage the symptoms of the problem, right? And like, let's just not waste time. Let's just go to the root, unroot it, and be well. All those symptoms are going to go away. So with the root of a codependent, usually a codependent person was the imprint there is they didn't get the proper nurture and attunement from the parent. We'll just say mom. And they did though, however, kind of like substitute for that nurture by
Mm.
nurturing the parent in a way, or maybe nurturing a younger sibling. And so when a child is not getting the nurture she needs from the parent, but the parent is sharing her problems with her daughter, let's say her 4-year-old daughter, she's like, oh, little Lindsey, daddy's just being really mean to mommy and it's hard and it makes mommy cry. And little Lindsey's like, oh, mommy. So she's like attuning to mommy now. It's a semblance of nurture. It's better
Mm.
than nothing, as in she's creating this close connection and it is warm. It's not right and she feels it
Mhm.
intuitively, but it's giving her something and something's better than nothing. And so she's that imprint's being laid. Oh, when I nurture others, I can get some nurture. And so now little Lindsey, instead of feeling angry at mom, because she does deep down intuitively feel this is all screwed up. Like, this is not right. I should be the one getting comfort. I should be the one being attuned to, and I'm attuning to you. And she does have the anger, but it's suppressed. And now she has like this layer of empathy that kind of squelches. It has a role. It's kind of like numbing her from her own anger because to actually feel her anger at mom, her attachment figure, is too
Mhm.
dangerous because she can't afford to be angry at mom. She can't afford to jeopardize her relationship with mom, who she knows mom's not going to stand for the anger. Mom might give her silent treatment, which feels just like abandonment and rejection. So she's not going to do that. That's too tenuous. So she suppresses the anger, and now she feels like this empathy for mom, and now she's feeling for everyone else in the world. I just really love helping people. I don't know what I'm feeling. I know what I'm not feeling is anger, because I never ever feel anger. I just feel empathy for everyone all the time. That foundation, that template is laid. And now a codependent, she does feel anger, but she's so disassociative from her anger that she's just feeling empathy for everyone else. But when she comes to me as a therapist, I'm like, oh, you're so angry, but all you feel is this empathy. And it's so funny to me. You're really actually angry, and you're disassociating from your anger by your empathy, and you're nurturing everyone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think what's like beautiful about having somebody else sit across from you as a professional and be able to hear you and then pull it apart differently, because I think that that's one of those, again, hopeful moments that maybe you just haven't gotten to the right resource that can hear you appropriately and help. There's help out there. It just might look different than what you thought it did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the goal, though, for someone who's on the codependent spectrum, getting back to your question, to unlearn that is to learn the first most important boundary is this invisible boundary where I am only responsible for my feelings. And
Mhm.
you, Lindsey, are only responsible for your feelings. And I tell my clients, you might want to be responsible for other people's feelings, but it's actually impossible to do. And you will die trying. So that first boundary is, you know what? As much as I'm empathetic and I'm always wanting to attune to everyone else and manage their feelings, that's actually a delusion. And I'm going to have this boundary because in order to be responsible for my feelings, I actually can't be trying to be responsible for someone else's feelings. It's an either or, it's a zero sum game. So I'm going to start just attuning to myself and going, what am I feeling? Because my feelings matter. They really do matter. Oh, am I feeling kind of angry? Well, that's actually an okay feeling to have. That doesn't make me evil. It doesn't make me shameful. It's actually like a light on the dashboard of my emotional car saying, hey, check under the hood. Something's wrong. So it's there for a reason. And it's there to give me information, to inform me, to say, hey, something's wrong. Something needs attention. And really something needs assertiveness, like, hey, that's not okay. That being assertive, a boundary, or some kind of accountability.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's good. I love the check engine light. Pay attention, pay attention. Yes. Okay. So I kind of, because this is deep, we're keeping it kind of summed up as it is today. And I feel
Yeah.
like, again, for the people who want to dip their toe in the water, to start with the rooted, and we'll put that in the show notes, part of your podcast, knowing that somebody like you exists is huge. If you could wrap your arms around our listeners, like if they hear nothing else out of you today, what would be your one takeaway that you're like, please hear this?
I would say if you want to heal your relationship with food and your body, you need to heal your relationship with your inner child. There's no shortcut. And it's not that hard. I mean, there's a lot of therapists who will make you feel like it is, that it's going to take years and years and years of therapy, but it's not. It really isn't rocket science. It's really as simple as engaging in these imagination exercises. And it's powerful. And that is where our little inner child unlearns those imprints, those templates are overturned, they're transformed. And we
Mhm.
become that source of comfort and nurture and attunement that we're looking for. I find my clients come to me and they're like, I started shopping at the farmer's market and I started just running. I've never run in my life and it just feels so good. And I'm not the one telling them to do that. They're just wanting to self nurture.
Mhm.
It just
Mhm.
feels natural. It's just like a natural repercussion of healing their relationship with themselves. And so A lot of therapists put the cart before the horse. You would come to me and I'd say, well, Lindsey, you're depressed, so you need to exercise. Okay, that's the wrong chronology. So healing our relationship with our inner child has myriad benefits, but it really is us learning to self-attune and to no longer betray ourselves. And that is the most powerful thing in the world, because that's when we become whole. We become whole when we integrate with ourselves.
Mhm.
And that makes us whole and complete. And we're not compelled to look for something outside of us to complete us. And we just feel it. I've had clients tell me, I feel like homeostasis inside. One of my clients, she's a nurse. She used that term. I'm like, okay, that's a perfect homeostasis, because I just feel like I can be still and I'm not like always like wanting to move and run and compelled to do all these things. I can just sit and I feel still inside. And I've never felt this way. So, yeah. So, this is kind of going to the root, is how we no longer betray ourselves, how we learn to be true to ourselves, which is not selfish, it's imperative.
Yeah. Yes. And what a beautiful summary with, and again, if hear this, listeners, you cannot heal from a food standpoint. Wait, what you're beating down the door trying to do with food and fitness needs to be attached to that emotional end. And a lot of times it takes people a really long time to get there, where they're like, okay, this food and fitness thing hasn't worked for me and I've been at it for 15 years. Right? So like, what's the piece I'm missing? It's the mental emotional piece. And to have somebody hear you and go, you cannot not heal this and get results here. Like it's that plain and simple. So hopefully, thank you. People heard that today. And if you've never attacked the mental end, it's time. Your sustainable results are on the other end of that, which is really fun to think about. Yes. Oh my goodness. What a delight. So nice to meet you. Thank you for
Thank
coming on
you.
today.
You're
Yes.
welcome.
We'll have to snag you once we can absorb this and grow a little bit for part two.
All on my podcast. I listen to the podcast I'm interested into over and over. So I get it. Like, you do need to hear these things. If they're new, you're like, wait, what? So yeah. So feel
Yes.
free. My podcast is Angry at the Right Things. You can hear all this again. And my co-host Katie slows me down. She's like, wait, what? What are you talking about? So I get good like accountability with her.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know. Way to explain it. Talk about it a different way.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much, Bronwyn, for coming on today.
You're welcome, Lindsey.